The house stood tall behind iron gates, shining with marble floors and glass walls. But inside it felt cold to those who worked there. From the outside it looked like a place of comfort and success. Inside it was a place where silence was safer than words. The maid arrived before sunrise every day. She cleaned the floors, washed dishes, and kept the room spotless. She moved softly, almost like she was afraid to leave a trace of herself behind. Her clothes were always clean, but old. Her hands were rough from years of work, yet gentle in everything she touched. She had come from a small town where life was hard and choices were few. When her father passed away, responsibility fell on her shoulders overnight. Her mother was sick, and her younger siblings still depended on her. This job was not a dream, but it was survival. Every coin she earned mattered. The lady of the house was known for her sharp voice and colder heart. She liked order, control, and obedience. To her, the staff were not people, but tools. Mistakes, even small ones, were treated as personal insults. She believed fear was the best way to keep people loyal. The maid learned quickly how to stay invisible. She kept her eyes lowered and her answers short. She never complained, even when her body ached or her hands burned from cleaning chemicals. She believed that patience was the price of peace. One morning, during a busy gathering at the house, something went wrong. A tray slipped slightly in the maid's hands. A cup rattled but did not break. No drink spilled. No damage was done, but the sound caught attention. The lady turned, her face tight with anger. In front of guests and staff, she walked straight toward the maid. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what was coming, but no one dared to step in. Her voice was loud and cutting. She accused the maid of being careless, of embarrassing the household. The maid tried to speak, her voice trembling, but the words were cut off. The lady ordered her to kneel. For a moment, time froze. The maid stood still, her heart racing. Kneeling was not part of any job. It was not discipline. It was humiliation. Her knees felt weak, but her chest felt even heavier. The lady repeated the order, louder this time. Eyes were watching. Silence pressed from every corner of the room. Slowly, with shaking hands, the maid lowered herself to the floor. The cold surface touched her knees. Her head bowed, not because she agreed, but because she had no choice. Some people looked away. Some watched without emotion. No one spoke. From across the room, a man noticed everything. He was not someone who lived in the house, but he visited often due to family and business ties. He was used to wealth and control, but something about this moment felt wrong to him. The silence felt heavy. The power felt cruel. He saw the maid's hands tremble as she pressed them together. He saw the shame in her lowered eyes. Something tightened in his chest. The lady continued to scold her, listing small mistakes from the past, as if collecting proof of failure. Each word landed like a stone. The maid said nothing. She focused on breathing, on staying still, on surviving the moment. Finally, the lady turned away as if bored, ordering the maid to clean herself and return to work. Just like that, the humiliation was dismissed as if it meant nothing. The maid stood slowly. Pain shot through her knees, but she did not react. She picked up the tray with steady hands and walked away without looking back. In the hallway, her breath broke. She leaned against the wall for a second, pressing her lips together to stop herself from crying. She would not cry here. She refused to give anyone that satisfaction. She washed her face in the staff's bathroom and returned to work as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. The man could not forget what he saw. Throughout the day, his eyes followed her movements from a distance. He noticed how quietly she worked, how carefully she avoided attention. He noticed how no one spoke to her unless necessary. He realized this was not a single incident. This was a pattern. Later that evening, as the house settled into quiet, the maid cleaned a sitting room alone. Her body felt heavy, but her mind was heavier. She wondered how long she could keep living like this. How many times dignity had to be swallowed for survival. The man passed by and paused. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt weak, and the space between them felt too wide. He simply nodded slightly in acknowledgement. The maid noticed and returned the nod, surprised by the simple gesture of respect. It was small, but it stayed with her. That night, as she lay on her thin mattress in the staff quarters, her knees still aching, she stared at the ceiling. She reminded herself why she endured this life. For her family, for tomorrow. She did not know that the moment she was forced to kneel would become the first step toward a truth no one in that house was ready to face. And she did not know that. Someone had finally seen her not as a servant, but as a human being. Days passed in the house, each one blending into the next. The maid continued her work quietly, as if the incident never happened, but inside she felt a new kind of strength growing. She realized that humiliation could hurt, but it could not define her. Each day she reminded herself that she was more than what others thought of her. The man who had seen her kneeling watched from a distance, noticing things no one else seemed to see. He saw the care she took in every task, the way she organized items neatly, the precision in cleaning, the subtle kindness in small gestures. When a younger child in the house dropped a toy or spilled a drink, she would gently help without a hint of anger or annoyance. He began to understand her world better. Her silence was not weakness. It was patience. Her quiet movements were not fear. They were careful wisdom. And her eyes, though often downcast, held a spark of resilience that could not be ignored. As the days went by, small interactions began to form between them. It started with brief glances across the room. Then, one evening, as she carried a stack of clean linens, she passed him in the hallway. He said nothing, but he offered a small nod, acknowledging her presence. She hesitated for a moment, surprised by the gesture, and nodded back. It was a simple exchange, but it carried meaning neither of them could yet explain. The maid's life outside the house was difficult. Her wages were modest, and she sent nearly every coin home to her family. There was little time for rest or pleasure, yet she never complained. She learned to find small moments of peace, a warm cup of tea before sunrise, the quiet of an empty street, the laughter of a neighbor's child. These moments reminded her why she endured each day. At the same time, the man began to notice more than her work. He noticed how she treated others with respect, even those who treated her poorly. He noticed how she smiled softly at small joys and never let anger or bitterness take root in her heart. Each observation deepened his respect for her. One afternoon, a minor accident occurred in the house. A vase tipped over, spilling water onto the floor. Some staff members panicked, but she moved calmly. She cleaned the water, righted the vase, and checked the surrounding area for damage. She did not complain about the mess, nor did she make excuses. The man observed silently, impressed by her composure. Slowly, he began to see her in a new light, not as someone to pity, but as a person of quiet strength. He wanted to speak to her, to acknowledge her worth openly, but the walls of the household made that impossible. The lady of the house ruled with strict eyes, and any deviation from obedience could bring punishment. One evening, he found himself in the kitchen as she finished preparing food. The room was warm with the smell of cooking, and the soft clatter of utensils filled the space. She worked without pause, yet he could sense the weight she carried, not just the physical labor, but the emotional burden of enduring constant judgment. He cleared his throat softly, careful not to startle her. She looked up, her eyes wary but polite. He offered a gentle compliment, praising her efficiency and care. She blinked, surprised. She had heard praise before, but rarely from someone who truly noticed her efforts. She murmured a quiet thank you, and for a brief moment, the world felt a little lighter. Their interactions grew slowly over the next few weeks. They spoke in brief sentences, careful not to draw attention. He asked questions about her family, about her life before the house, and she answered honestly but cautiously. She did not reveal everything. Trust took time to build. Through these conversations, he began to understand the depth of her character. She had endured hardships beyond his imagining. She had faced hunger, sickness, and loss, yet she had never lost her sense of dignity or compassion. She had learned to survive not through cunning or force, but through resilience and patience. He began to share small things about his own life, carefully choosing what to reveal. He spoke of his responsibilities, his travels, and the pressures of his family. Though his world was very different, he felt that in her presence, he could be more honest, more human. The maid noticed the change too. She had always believed that those with wealth and power could not understand her world. Yet in these small interactions, she saw someone who truly tried to understand. Someone who valued her for who she was, not what she did. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a servant, but as a person. Despite the growing connection, the house remained a place of tension. The lady continued to wield control, punishing mistakes harshly and maintaining an atmosphere of fear. The maid learned to navigate carefully, using her intelligence and intuition to avoid trouble. She observed the household closely, anticipating issues before they arose, and slowly, she became indispensable, not just for her work, but for her insight and judgment. The man noticed this as well. He saw how others began to rely on her quietly, seeking guidance without openly acknowledging it. He admired her ability to influence the environment without confrontation, to maintain her dignity while navigating a difficult world. One evening, as the sun set behind the tall walls of the house, he found her standing alone in the garden. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with soft shades of orange and pink. He approached slowly, unsure if he should speak. She did not move, simply watching the colors fade into night. He said softly, "You handle everything with such care. It's remarkable." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both surprise and a quiet gratitude. "I do what I can," she said. "It's all I know." For a moment, they stood in silence, sharing a connection that went beyond words. Neither had to speak of the past humiliation, nor of the harshness of the household. In that quiet, they acknowledged each other's strength and humanity. That evening, she returned to her quarters. She felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps not everything in life was meant to crush her. Perhaps there were people who could see her worth, even in a world that often ignored it. The man, too, felt a shift. He realized that admiration had grown into something deeper, respect that could turn into affection, a desire to stand by someone who had endured so much with courage and dignity. And so life continued. The house remained a place of strict rules and harsh words, but within it, a quiet bond began to grow. It was fragile, unseen by others, but real. A bond based not on power or fear, but on mutual respect, understanding, and the recognition of strength where it was least expected. The maid's world was still full of challenges, but she began to carry them differently. She walked with her head a little higher, her steps a little steadier, and her heart a little braver. She had learned that survival was not just about enduring, but about holding on to the parts of herself that could not be broken. The man watched and learned too. He saw that true strength was not measured by wealth or control, but by the ability to remain kind, patient, and dignified in the face of hardship. Together, though neither could admit it yet, they began a journey of understanding that would change both of their lives forever. Weeks passed quietly, but the calm in the house was fragile. The maid moved through her days with steady determination, aware of the ever-watchful eyes of the lady of the house. Despite the harsh environment, she had learned to anticipate problems, to act before mistakes could be noticed, and to protect herself with patience and careful attention. One afternoon, a misunderstanding arose that threatened to disrupt the household. A minor accident had been blown out of proportion by a staff member who misinterpreted events. The vase that had fallen the previous week was now cited as evidence of the maid's alleged carelessness. The lady of the house, fueled by pride and the need to assert dominance, called for a gathering to address the issue. The maid stood quietly in the room, her hands folded in front of her. Her eyes lowered as the lady enumerated every mistake, real or imagined. Each word was meant to humiliate, to provoke fear. The staff shifted uncomfortably, knowing that any sign of empathy could be interpreted as disrespect. The man who had been observing the household from the shadows was present as well. He had grown increasingly aware of the unfair treatment the maid endured, and he felt a deep urge to intervene. Yet he was careful, knowing that the dynamics of the household could be delicate and explosive. Speaking out required timing, evidence, and courage. The lady's voice grew louder as she continued her accusations. The maid's pulse quickened, but she did not speak. Her silence was not submission. It was strategy. She understood that defending herself verbally in this moment could escalate the situation beyond repair. The man noticed the maid's subtle composure. Despite the public scolding, she maintained an upright posture, controlled breathing, and calm hands. He realized that her dignity was not merely a mask, but a deep-rooted strength that allowed her to survive the relentless scrutiny. As the lady continued her tirade, one of the other staff members, feeling nervous and guilty, spoke up. This person revealed that the incident had been exaggerated and that the maid had acted responsibly under the circumstances. The room went silent as the truth began to emerge. The man stepped forward carefully. Offering corroboration of the maid's actions, he described what he had seen over the weeks, her meticulous care, her fairness, and her patience. His words were deliberate, measured, and without accusation, allowing the truth to stand on its own weight. For a brief moment, the lady of the house was stunned. Her authority was challenged not by anger or force, but by observation and reason. The balance of power in the room shifted slightly, and for the first time, the maid was acknowledged not merely as a servant, but as a capable and honorable individual. The incident did not erase the years of mistreatment, but it marked a turning point. The maid felt a sense of relief mingled with lingering tension. She had been vindicated, yet the environment remained tense and controlled. The lady's pride was bruised, and subtle changes in behavior could be felt in the air. Following the confrontation, the man and the maid exchanged a brief, silent acknowledgement. There was no need for words. The shared understanding was enough. In that moment, the invisible bond between them grew stronger, rooted in respect and mutual recognition. Life in the household continued, but the maid carried herself with a renewed sense of confidence. She understood that her ability to navigate the complex social dynamics was as important as her work. She was not only surviving, but quietly asserting her presence in a way that could not be ignored. The man watched these developments closely. He admired the maid's resilience and was increasingly drawn to her integrity and courage. He began to reflect on his own actions and privileges, realizing that true influence did not come from wealth or control, but from understanding, empathy, and support for those who often went unseen. Outside the household, the maid's life remained challenging. She continued to send money home to care for her family and to maintain her own health and spirit. Each day required balance between labor, responsibility, and small moments of self-care. She walked the fine line between endurance and empowerment, learning to find strength in her routine and pride in her diligence. One afternoon, while organizing books and household items, she found a small note left on a shelf by the man. It was simple and discreet, expressing appreciation for her efforts and acknowledging her capability. She read it carefully, a small smile forming on her face. It was the first direct acknowledgement she had received, without fear, obligation, or hierarchy. And it meant more than words could fully express. This small gesture strengthened the trust between them. Though the world around them remained rigid and judgmental, they had discovered a safe space within each other's awareness, a space where honesty, respect, and recognition could exist without fear. The maid also noticed changes in her own perspective. She began to recognize her value beyond her labor, seeing herself as a person of dignity and capability, deserving of fairness and acknowledgement. This shift in self-perception allowed her to act with greater confidence and subtle assertiveness in the household. The man, too, began to see the nuances of the maid's life and strength. He noticed how she navigated social dynamics, balanced responsibilities, and maintained composure in adversity. Each observation deepened his admiration, transforming initial respect into genuine affection and a desire to protect and support her. Even the smallest interactions became significant. A brief conversation about a task, a shared glance across a room, or a quiet acknowledgement of effort became moments of connection. These moments were carefully nurtured, each reinforcing the growing understanding and bond between them as the weeks turned into months. The maid's quiet influence within the household became more evident, Others began to recognize her wisdom, though they rarely acknowledged it openly. She had become a subtle force for order, fairness, compassion in an environment that often lacked those qualities. The man continued to support her discreetly. He offered guidance, encouragement, and protection when needed, ensuring that her efforts were seen and respected without causing conflict with the lady of the house. This careful balance required sensitivity, patience, and strategic understanding of the household dynamics. One evening, after a particularly long day, the maid sat quietly in the garden, reflecting on the changes she had experienced. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the humility she had endured, and the small victories she had achieved. The man joined her, and they walked slowly along the garden path. They spoke softly about the day's events, their words carrying respect, trust, and a shared understanding. In these moments, they found comfort and connection, a respite from the pressures and judgments of the household. Through these interactions, the maid learned that strength was not always loud or confrontational. It could be quiet, persistent, and resilient. It could survive humiliation, endure hardship, and still emerge with dignity intact. And she realized that recognition, respect, and even affection could exist in unexpected places. The man, in turn, realized that true admiration and care were not about possession or control. They were about seeing, understanding, and valuing the inherent worth of another human being. In the maid, he found a spirit that had endured much and grown stronger, for it a spirit that inspired him to be more compassionate and patient. The events of the week marked a turning point in their relationship. They no longer simply existed in proximity. They began to share a mutual understanding that transcended social hierarchy and power dynamics. They began to see each other as equals in the realm of character and integrity. The household, with all its strict rules and rigid authority, continued to demand compliance and respect. But within the careful movements of the maid and the observant presence of the man, a quiet rebellion of dignity and mutual acknowledgement had begun. This rebellion was not loud or confrontational. It was subtle, steadfast, and profoundly human. And so life in the house moved forward. The maid continued her work with determination and newfound confidence. The man watched and supported, learning from her resilience and growing affection. In the midst of strict authority, judgment, and power, a space of understanding, respect, and quiet connection flourished. Space that would continue to shape both their lives in ways neither had anticipated. The atmosphere in the house began to change. Though slowly and subtly, the lady of the house, whose pride had been bruised by the earlier incidents, started losing her influence in quiet ways. Staff began to notice her decisions were questioned. Her words weighed differently, and her authority had less unquestioned power than before. She felt it but could not admit it, and her attempts to reassert control often backfired. The maid continued her duties with her usual calm and diligence. Yet there was a noticeable difference in how she moved through the house. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that came from surviving both hardship and humiliation. She had earned the respect of many through her wisdom, patience, and the integrity with which she performed even the smallest tasks. The man observed all of this with growing admiration. He noticed the way others began to defer to her quietly, seeking guidance or subtly following her lead without ever overtly challenging the lady of the house. It was as if the entire household was slowly acknowledging that the maid's strength and intelligence were undeniable. One day, a serious matter arose when a shipment of important goods was delayed, causing worry for the household and financial loss for the family. The lady of the house panicked and blamed several staff members, pointing fingers and raising her voice. Chaos threatened to take over the household. The maid, however, took a different approach. She calmly assessed the situation, checked the records, and traced the issue step by step. Within a short time, she identified the source of the problem, proposed a solution, and worked diligently to fix it. Her composure and effectiveness surprised everyone. The lady tried to intervene, but found her orders redundant. The maid's expertise in calm problem-solving became evident, and even the most skeptical staff members began to recognize her value. The man, standing by quietly, realized that the maid's quiet influence had begun to reshape the dynamics of the house. In the days that followed, the maid's reputation grew further. Even the lady of the house, though reluctant, began to rely on her for guidance, though she never admitted it openly. The power balance shifted subtly, but significantly. The maid's dignity and respect were no longer dependent solely on her obedience. They came from her capability and character. Amid these changes, the connection between the man and the maid deepened. They continued to exchange brief conversations, small gestures, and discreet notes of acknowledgement. Each interaction was a reminder of mutual respect and understanding. They found solace in the moments they shared. A quiet space away from the pressures and judgments of the household. One evening, the man found the maid in the garden after a long day of work. The sun had set, and the air was cool and fragrant with the scent of flowers. They walked slowly together, speaking in low tones about small matters, the day's challenges, and observations of life within and outside the household. The maid spoke of her family, her dreams, and her fears. She shared memories of struggles from her past, the losses she had endured, and the determination that had carried her this far. The man listened, not with judgment or pity, but with genuine understanding and empathy. He recognized the resilience that had shaped her, the quiet strength that had survived adversity. He, in turn, shared parts of his own experiences, the responsibilities he bore, the pressures he faced, and the lessons he had learned. Their conversations, though guarded, were honest. Trust grew in this shared space of dialogue. Trust built on mutual recognition and respect. The maid began to feel a sense of liberation. For years she had lived under judgment and authority, constantly wary of mistakes and reprimands. Now she found a rare moment of understanding and equality. It was not a loud declaration of change, but a quiet acknowledgement that she mattered, that her efforts and character were seen and valued. The man's admiration for the maid went beyond her efficiency and capability. He was drawn to her humanity, the way she maintained kindness despite hardship, the patience with which she endured, and the integrity that guided her actions. His feelings grew quietly, rooted in respect and deep appreciation. One morning, a sudden health issue affected the maid's family. She received a message that required immediate attention. Leaving her torn between duty to her family and obligations in the household, the man, aware of the situation, discreetly offered support. He coordinated matters to ensure she could attend to her family without facing conflict at work, arranging for tasks to be covered in her absence. This act of support was not ostentatious. It was practical, considerate, and deeply meaningful. The maid realized that someone truly cared for her well-being, not as a servant or obligation, but as a person deserving of respect and care. Gratitude and warmth filled her heart, feelings she had rarely allowed herself to experience. When she returned from attending to her family, the household had settled, and her responsibilities were manageable. The man met her quietly, checking on her and ensuring she was well. Their brief conversation carried more weight than words could express. They both understood the growing bond between them, a bond founded on mutual respect, trust, and shared understanding. The maid's position in the household became more secure, not through fear or compliance, but through the undeniable value she provided. Staff members looked to her for guidance, and even the lady of the house, though reluctant, had to acknowledge her competence. The dynamics of power had shifted, quietly, but irreversibly. Throughout these changes, the maid's character continued to shine. She treated others fairly, offered guidance without arrogance, and maintained humility despite recognition. She had learned to navigate a difficult world with intelligence, patience, and dignity. Her quiet influence became a stabilizing force in the household. The man, observing all of this, felt a growing sense of responsibility and admiration. He began to understand that true leadership and affection were not about control or power, but about recognizing and supporting the strength in others. In the maid, he saw not just a servant or companion, but but a human being whose resilience and dignity inspired him deeply. Evenings in the garden became their sanctuary, a place where they could speak freely, share observations, and reflect on life beyond the walls of the house. These moments, though small and private, strengthened the bond between them. They offered solace, encouragement, and understanding in a world that often lacked these qualities. The maid also began to see herself differently. The experiences she had endured, the patience she had cultivated, the quiet influence she had established gave her a sense of empowerment. She realized that her dignity was her own, not dependent on the opinions of others. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more confident. The man, too, underwent a transformation. He learned to value quiet strength, integrity, and patience over status and power. He recognized that admiration and affection were not based on wealth or position, but on character and resilience. Life in the house continued, but a new equilibrium had been established. The maid's quiet influence, combined with the man's support and understanding, created a subtle shift in the household dynamics. Authority, respect, and recognition were no longer solely dictated by power and fear, but also by capability, integrity, and empathy. The bond between the maid and the man grew steadily, rooted in respect, understanding, and shared experiences. It was not loud or obvious, but it was strong, resilient, and meaningful. In a household defined by control and judgment, they had found a quiet space of equality and connection, a space that would continue to shape both of their lives in profound ways. Time passed, and the house that had once felt cold and controlling began to shift in subtle ways. The maid, once seen only as a worker to obey, had become a central presence in the household. Her quiet influence, patience, and capability were respected by staff and even grudgingly acknowledged by the lady of the house. The man, who had watched her from the beginning, felt his admiration deepen into something more profound. The maid herself had changed too. Through trials, quiet victories, and small moments of acknowledgement, she had grown stronger. She understood her own worth and dignity in ways she never had before. Her work was still hard, and life outside the household remained a challenge. But she carried herself with a sense of confidence and resilience that could not be diminished. The man began to recognize the depth of his feelings. He admired not just her strength, but her humanity, the compassion she showed, the patience she exercised, and the integrity with which she faced each day. He found himself wanting to protect her, support her, and stand beside her in ways that went beyond mere observation or admiration. One evening, as the household settled into quiet, the man found the maid alone in the garden. The sun was setting, casting a soft golden glow across the flowers and pathways. The air was cool and gentle. He approached slowly, not to startle her, and spoke in a calm, low voice. "I've seen everything you've endured and accomplished," he said. "You've carried yourself with strength and dignity even when no one else noticed. I want you to know that I see you, truly see you." The maid looked at him, her eyes reflecting surprise and a quiet warmth. For years she had endured harsh words and dismissive glances. To be acknowledged in this way was both humbling and uplifting. She felt a connection that went beyond words, a bond rooted in respect, understanding, and shared experience. "I've done what I could," she said softly. "I've had to survive, and I've had to care for others along the way. But it means a lot to hear that someone truly sees it." From that evening on, their interactions became more open and meaningful. They continued to work within the household, navigate its rules, and manage the complexities of daily life. But now, their moments together were infused with mutual respect, trust, and growing affection. They shared conversations about life, family, hopes, and dreams. They celebrated small successes, supported each other through challenges, and found joy in quiet moments of connection. The maid also began to take small steps toward her own independence. With the man's discreet support, she explored opportunities to improve her skills, manage her finances more effectively, and ensure that her family was cared for. These efforts reinforced her sense of self-worth and provided a foundation for future security. The man, in turn, became more attentive to the nuances of her life. He offered guidance, without patronizing, support without imposing, and companionship without expectation. Their relationship was built on equality, understanding, and shared humanity. One day, an unexpected event shook the household. A relative of the family visited, bringing with them a reputation for harsh judgment and control. They questioned the maid's presence and her role, insinuating that her influence was inappropriate. For a moment, tension filled the air, threatening to undo the subtle progress that had been made. The maid faced the challenge with quiet composure. She spoke truthfully and respectfully, demonstrating her competence, integrity, and value to the household. The man supported her calmly, presenting facts and observations that highlighted her contributions. Together, they navigated the confrontation without conflict, relying on reason, dignity, and mutual respect. By the end of the day, the household had witnessed a shift. The maid's value was recognized not only by her own merits, but by the clear respect and support she had earned. The visitor left, and the environment began to settle with a new understanding. The maid was no longer simply a servant, but a person whose strength and character commanded acknowledgement. As the days turned into weeks, the bond between the maid and the man continued to grow. They shared moments of laughter, quiet conversation, and mutual encouragement. Their connection was unspoken at times, yet profoundly felt. Each understood the other's struggles, hopes, and resilience. One evening, the man found the maid in the library, reviewing household accounts. He approached gently, speaking with honesty and sincerity. "I want to be by your side," he said. "Not because I can give you wealth or protection, but because I admire your strength, your dignity, and the person you are. I want us to face life together, as equals, supporting and respecting each other." The maid looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of surprise, relief, and warmth. She had longed for recognition, trust, and a true connection. Here it was, offered openly and without expectation, acknowledging her humanity and value. "I feel the same," she said quietly. "You see me and you respect me. That means more than anything else. I want the same, to walk alongside someone who understands and values me as I am." From that moment, their relationship entered a new chapter. It was not defined by hierarchy, wealth, or control, but by mutual respect, shared understanding, and love built on equality. They supported each other, celebrated victories, and faced challenges together. Their bond was a testament to resilience, patience, and the transformative power of recognition and kindness. The maid's position in the household became secure not through fear or obedience, but through undeniable capability and dignity. She continued her work with pride, knowing that her contributions were valued. Staff members looked to her with respect, and even the lady of the house, though still proud, acknowledged her quietly. The man and the maid began to envision a future together. They spoke of possibilities beyond the household, ways to build a life rooted in respect, love, and shared purpose. Their dreams were simple but meaningful, a home where dignity was honored, where compassion guided action, and where mutual support formed the foundation of life. In the evenings, they continued their walks in the garden, enjoying the quiet beauty of nature and the comfort of each other's presence. They shared stories, observations, and reflections on life, finding joy in the small moments that others might overlook. Their connection was steady, resilient, profound. The household continued to operate under its usual rules, but the dynamics had changed irreversibly. Authority was no longer the sole measure of respect. Character, integrity, and capability had earned acknowledgement. The maid had transformed her position not through confrontation, but through resilience, patience, and quiet strength. The man, deeply inspired by her journey, committed himself to being a partner who valued and respected her. He understood that love and support were not about control or status, but about mutual recognition, trust, and the willingness to face life's challenges together. Together, they navigated the complexities of life within and outside the household. They celebrated successes, supported each other through difficulties, and nurtured a bond rooted in understanding, respect, and affection. Their story was one of transformation, from humiliation to dignity, from observation to connection. From survival to love, the maid, once forced to kneel, had become a woman of strength, independence, and respect. The man, once a distant observer, had become a partner, ally, and admirer. Their journey was a testament to the power of resilience, patience, and the human capacity to recognize and honor the worth of another. In the end, they found that love was not about hierarchy or dominance, but about equality, understanding, and shared humanity. Together, they built a life that reflected their values, strengthened by the challenges they had faced and the trust they had nurtured. The maid, who had endured humiliation and hardship, emerged as the woman he loved most, not because of her position or role, but because of the strength, dignity, compassion she carried within her. After years of navigating a life filled with challenges and moments of quiet triumph, the maid had reached a place of inner strength she never imagined possible. Her experiences, from the early days of enduring harsh treatment to the gradual recognition of her capabilities, had shaped her into a woman of dignity, patience, and resilience. Each day carried its own work, responsibilities, and occasional tensions, but she now faced them with a calm confidence that inspired respect from those around her. The man remained a steadfast presence in her life, supporting and understanding her in ways that were deeply meaningful. Their bond had grown from simple recognition to trust, respect, and profound affection. Together, they had navigated the complexities of the household, overcoming challenges that would have seemed insurmountable to anyone less resolute. Their connection was rooted not in authority or obligation, but in shared humanity and the recognition of each other's strengths. One morning, as the first light of dawn filtered through the tall windows of the household, the maid prepared for her day with the quiet efficiency she had cultivated over years. The man observed her from a distance, noting the grace with which she moved, the care in her hands, and the quiet confidence in her posture. He felt a deep admiration, knowing that she carried not only the burdens of daily work, but also the weight of a life that had demanded more resilience than most could understand. The household continued to operate under its usual routines, but subtle shifts had taken place. Staff members who had once overlooked her now sought her guidance and acknowledged her judgment. Even the lady of the house, who maintained her pride, could not deny the influence the maid had earned. The balance of respect within the household had transformed, reflecting the maid's quiet but undeniable strength. One afternoon, a minor crisis arose when a valuable shipment intended for a charitable event was misplaced. Panic began to ripple through the household as staff struggled to locate the items. The maid, as always, remained composed. She calmly retraced steps, examined records, and coordinated efforts to recover the shipment. Her methodical approach and clear thinking quickly resolved the problem. Impressing everyone present, the man observed her closely, appreciating not just her skill, but the calm determination she displayed under pressure. He realized that her ability to handle challenges with grace was a testament to her character, and it deepened his respect and admiration even further. He approached her quietly, offering a simple acknowledgement of her success, and she responded with a nod and a faint smile. A small but significant exchange of mutual recognition. As the days progressed, the maid began to take more initiative within the household. She identified areas for improvement, suggested practical solutions, and helped train newer staff members. Her influence became a stabilizing force, not through force or dominance, but through example, guidance, and the integrity with which she conducted herself. The household gradually adjusted to her leadership, finding that her presence brought efficiency and harmony. Outside the household, she maintained her connections with her family, ensuring their well-being while managing her responsibilities at work. She balanced these aspects of her life with a growing sense of empowerment, knowing that her efforts were valued and that she had the support of someone who genuinely cared for her. One evening, as the sun set, casting a warm golden light over the garden, the man and the maid walked together, sharing thoughts and reflections on the day. The gentle conversation and quiet companionship reinforced their bond, providing a sanctuary from the pressures and judgments of the household. They spoke of dreams, hopes, the possibilities of a future. Shaped by mutual respect and love, the maid reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She recalled the early days when she had endured humiliation and harsh treatment, the moments of doubt and fear, and the small victories that had built her resilience. Each experience had contributed to the woman she had become strong, compassionate, and confident. The man, too, reflected on their journey. He understood that his admiration for her had grown into a commitment to support and stand beside her in all aspects of life. He valued her not for her position or role, but for her integrity, courage, and the depth of her character. Their relationship had transformed from distant observation to deep partnership. A new opportunity presented itself when the household was approached to participate in a community project aimed at helping those in need. The maid was entrusted with coordinating the initiative, reflecting the confidence the household had in her abilities. She accepted the responsibility with humility and determination. Knowing that her work could make a meaningful impact beyond the walls of the house, the man offered his support, assisting with planning and logistics while respecting her leadership. Their collaboration exemplified trust, mutual respect, and a shared commitment to positive action. As they worked together, they discovered new strengths in each other and deepened their connection through shared purpose. Throughout the project, the maid demonstrated exceptional organizational skills, empathy, and problem-solving ability. She interacted with community members with kindness and patience, earning admiration and respect from those who benefited from the initiative. The man observed her closely, noting the unwavering integrity and compassion she displayed in every interaction. Their efforts culminated in a successful event that brought joy and relief to many. The household, staff, and community members recognized the maid's contributions, celebrating not only her skill, but the character she had shown throughout the process. The sense of fulfillment and accomplishment was profound, reinforcing her belief in her own capabilities and the value of her work in the weeks that followed. The maid and the man continued to support each other in personal and professional endeavors. Their partnership grew stronger, rooted in trust, mutual respect, and shared experiences. They found comfort and joy in each other's company, understanding that true connection was built on equality, empathy, and recognition of one another's strengths. The maid's journey from humiliation to respect and recognition had reached a new stage. She had become a woman of influence not through dominance or fear, but through patience, resilience, and unwavering integrity. Her relationship with the man had transformed from quiet admiration to a partnership grounded in love, trust, and mutual support. Together, they envisioned a future where they could continue to make a positive impact, support each other's growth, and build a life characterized by dignity, compassion, and equality. Their story was a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of recognition, and the transformative potential of mutual respect and understanding, even as the household maintained its routines and expectations. The maid and the man had created a space within which they could thrive, grow, and support one another. Their bond was steady, resilient, and meaningful, reflecting the culmination of years of challenges, growth, and shared experiences. The maid, once forced to kneel, emerged not only as a figure of respect and influence within the household, but as a woman whose strength, dignity, and compassion had inspired love and admiration. The man, once a distant observer, had become a partner, ally, and confidant, committed to standing beside her as they navigated life together. Their journey demonstrated that true recognition, respect, and love were earned through integrity, patience, and resilience. The hardships they had faced had strengthened their bond, revealing the depth of character and human connection that could emerge even in the most challenging circumstances. In the end, the maid and the man found a life filled with understanding, support, and mutual respect. They celebrated each other's strengths, faced challenges together, and nurtured a love built on equality and shared humanity. The maid, who had once endured humiliation, had become the woman he loved most, not because of her position or role, because of the strength, dignity, and compassion she carried within her.